What's up, everybody? It is Ananka, and welcome to my bazaar. Today, I have an ayahuasca/cannabis trip report for you. The title of this trip report is Jungle Moment, Darkness Eternity, and was submitted to Erowid in 2010 by the user Psychedelic Fan. With all that being said, let our story begin. So I wanted a trip, voyage, flight, whatever you want to call it. I am a 21-year-old college student. Acid and shrooms were things of the past when I heard about DMT brew. I researched and read, then researched some more, as I always do, just to make sure. I found a site that sold the ingredients I needed. I picked Syrian rue and Mimosa hostilis, as this seemed to be the easiest to brew. The first 2 times I tried this, I couldn't hold it down and upchucked all of it before it could settle in. This sucked, leaving me with a sick feeling for the rest of the night. 3rd time was the charm, since I added some Jell-O, which takes out the fats that upset my stomach. I boiled 2 grams of Syrian rue for about an hour in water with some vinegar. I ended up with a piss yellow brew that was easy to get down. Waited about 20 minutes until I felt it kick in. Light was sensitive to the eyes, and very slight movement when concentrating on certain objects. Then I began gulping the Mimosa hostilis tea with about 2 grams of Syrian rue and chasing with some peach juice. This was about the hardest thing for me to ever get down. It tastes so bad to me. After getting all of it down, over about 15 minutes, the nausea began to kick in again. I ran to the bathroom a few times, but held it down. I loaded a bowl and smoked some dro to help with this, then put in a movie and waited for about an hour and a half. 9:07 p.m. It hit me like the flip of a switch. The floor began moving underneath my coffee table. I looked over at my girlfriend as her face had translucent patterns and tribal marks spinning and rotating on her face. Her irises were changing colors and spinning in the opposite direction of the patterns on her face. Her hair spiked up into the air and grew tall right before my eyes. She was no longer my girlfriend, but the spiritual shaman that was introducing me into this world. The walls were breathing all around me, and it was hard to focus on anything. I got up and went across the room to my computer. I attempted to look for a song on my mind, but the titles and artists were changing sizes and coming in and out of the screen. It was impossible to focus and remember what I was doing. I went back to bed and tried to converse with my lover. About 10:15 p.m., my girlfriend, who was sober, gave up on me by this time. I guess I did not make any sense, and I told her that I could no longer look at her because the shaman kept coming back and showing himself to me. I began getting very, very cold, shaking like I was outside in the snow for hours. About 10:30 p.m., my lover was no longer stoned and falling asleep very fast. Like when I started to trip at a flip of a switch, I did not feel good at all. I simply felt horrible, not seeing anything, only the horrible cold feeling coming from within my soul. I made a trip to the bathroom and puked some bile and dry heaved the rest of the time for a few minutes. One of the saliva clumps formed into a lizard and swam across the toilet water, then disappeared into 1,000 particles. I remember having to really make my body get up and move into the other room, or I would have been stuck there forever. I lay down and started to calm down, closing my eyes. The next thing I remember is that I cannot fall asleep, because if I did, I would never be able to wake up. A Tim Burton clay creature with 10 long hind legs, striped with black and white, crawled into my mind and laughed at me. He was a disgusting, evil creature, with green light shining out of every orifice on his head. He was bruised and had sores throughout his entire body. He crawled like the Exorcist girl crawled down the staircase, unnatural and disjointed. I knew at this point that I wanted to be normal. Would I ever be normal again? He crawled around, showing me my family and how I was to be. A schizophrenic zombie, a waste to society, a waste to the meaning and value of life. I looked at the clock, and it read 10:47. Only a few minutes have passed, and I knew I had many hours to go. I began trying to change my pathway of thinking, staring straight at the wall ahead of me, letting go and taking the voyage I had been desiring. After dry heaving and returning to my bed once again, I felt normal. I thought to myself that I most likely just came through the second wave of my trip. I decided to not stare at the wall. Afraid of what was to come next, I put on the movie Obsessed. It was about 11:15 by now. A few minutes into the movie, I felt it coming back. At this point, I was telling myself over and over just to write it out and that time is on your side. I was back in complete darkness, feeling absolutely crazy. I don't know how to explain it. I didn't see or envision anything but dark and loneliness. I felt the creature that kept haunting me close by, so I stared at the movie and wondered if I would ever feel the same again. 12:26 a.m. I felt paralyzed. I did not want to move, nor did it seem like I could. My eyes no longer could make anything out. Everything around me was blurry, and when I closed them, the darkness slowly approaching me again. My girlfriend stretched out her leg and met with the side of my body. I was in a jungle with her now. We were traveling through the lands, searching for something. This was like watching a movie in my head. As we continued through the vast scenery, I followed my lover into a clearing with a very soft fire. No flame, just smoke still going, if that makes any sense. There were some eyes in the trees looking over us. Out of nowhere, a baby is lifted up above the gentle smoking fire, and there is a celebration within my body, within the clearing. I no longer feel the darkness I mentioned before. Just as the darkness feeling leaves, the Tim Burton creature again crawled out in view. The jungle disappeared, and blackness came around me almost as if he reminded me who was in charge and how I should feel. The horrible dark feeling came over me again, feeling sick and heading to the toilet. I must have been in the bathroom for some time, or must have blacked out, because the next thing I remember, I was on the bed, paralyzed again, feeling very lonely and very uncomfortable. I turned and looked at the clock, and it read 2 a.m. I felt it come back. At this point, I was getting used to the shuffled mindset, feeling absolutely crazy. My movements were uncontrolled, jerking my head all around every direction I wanted to look. I'm surprised I didn't give myself whiplash. My eyes then focused on my cat, Luna. She is a long-haired black cat with some white. I reached out to pet her as she laid on the foot of the bed. Her coat was ashy and gray, ashes floating off into the air as I pet her. She looked so old it freaked me out a bit. Then the sickness hitting me again. I was so tired of throwing up and just wanted this voyage to be over. About 3:30 a.m., after throwing up for the last time, I returned to my bed and noticed some color changes in the movie that had started over by this time. I looked at the clock and it read 3:17. I knew that I was finally starting to come down. Although the dark, lonely feeling continued, it was not as intense. I turned off the television and rolled on my back, looking at the ceiling for some time. It was almost 5 a.m. now. I was sane enough to go to sleep. I closed my eyes and tried to put all the things I experienced in my memory to share with in the morning. I woke up about 7:15 a.m. and was still high but not tripping at all. I was so glad I was back in the world I am used to. Conclusion: this was by far the most intense trip I have ever had. I did not feel in control at times, and frankly, fucking crazy. I believe that Mimosa hostilis is not a good vine, and will never journey with it again. I have heard that Cappy and Viridis vine is generally a much more pleasant experience. Alright everyone, that is the end of our story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Share with us your ayahuasca experiences down in the comments below. Check out the other videos and playlists on my channel. And I will see you in the next one, fam. Deuces.